What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode or another show of the Pittsburgh Steelers pregame or preview show. Today, we're going to be previewing the upcoming Monday night matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Monday night, it's 8:15 kickoff. It's the second game of a double on Monday night, and it's a game that, well, the Steelers kind of need to come back and you know they need to take their name back. I mean, they got to get their man card back. It was embarrassing what happened last week. The Steelers were like manhandled every form or facet of the game. It was horrible. It was horrible. And this week it's redemption time. Go up against the Cleveland Browns, a team that the Pittsburgh Steelers are very familiar with, and there's a rivalry there, right? And the Steelers just cannot go 0-2. Losing into a division, a divisional game, this early would be good. I mean, it's not obviously a season ender or a season breaker of the Pittsburgh Steelers' fault to 0-2. It's just, after the preseason, it's just a really, really hard dose of reality if that ends up happening. And the hype that we all had coming into the regular season, just, how they say that, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. And I've had, those expectations had us really big or really high, and it's a hard fall if this ends up happening this way. But I think the Steelers are going to have an opportunity to do well in this game. There's a good chance that Steelers are going to win this game. I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be a tough game though, but the Steelers are going to have to play their style of game to do so. The Cleveland Browns are coming off of a 24-3 win against the Bengals, one in where they held Joe Burrow to 82 yards on 14 attempts, or 31 attempts, 14 complete. That's horrible. He had a 2.6 yard average. Now, I get why he was, probably bad. It probably had a lot to do with his injury to his leg, kept him out the entire training camp preseason. In fact, he didn't start practicing, from my understanding, real practicing until the end of the preseason, in between that 2-week break. So obviously he wasn't going to come back on the same page with his team. So the fact that the Browns beat the Bengals by this amount in a rainy stadium at home, in the home opener, momentum's coming in there with Cleveland Browns. You know how they are. Fans are optimistic coming into the first week of the season because, every year the Browns win the offseason and they're the paper champs, right? So they came in, they're hyped. The team is hyped, and you're going up against a team that, in the Bengals, that hadn't played well with hadn't played with each other. So they took advantage of it, and they ended up winning. Now, the same thing kind of happened last season with the Steelers, right? They went and played the Bengals in the first week. Now that was in Cincinnati, though. That's the difference. But in that game, Joe Burrow wasn't Joe Burrow. He was throwing interceptions left and right. I think we ended up causing turnovers. I think it was like 4 interceptions and 1 fumble from Joe Burrow. So, him not participating or playing in the preseason, I think does make a difference. And there might be a few games for him to get back caught up to speed. You don't just go from, 14 to 31, 82 yards and sacked twice to all of a sudden just, being the MVP the following week. It's going to take him at least a game or two more before he's himself. Now, I anticipate Joe Burrow is going to be a lot better than he was last week. But, I think he's still going to be getting up to speed, so to speak. But Deshaun Watson, he really didn't have excuse. He played, the 6 games last season at the end. I was at that Browns game, and I wasn't impressed with Deshaun Watson. I know a lot of people were saying, hey, he's only played 6 games. He was suspended. He didn't have the opportunity to play with his team, this, that, and the third. But I've seen Deshaun Watson play before against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the last time was in Houston. And in that game, to me, looked like the same Deshaun Watson, a guy that can, move a rocket, who's a little bit slippery. And, the Steelers had a little bit of a hard time getting him down last year and that first time. But at the end of the day, In both games, the Steelers took care of business, and it wasn't even close. So, yeah, I see the same guy. I've seen the same guy this last 6 games that he played, and this last game against the Bengals. He was 16 for 29, 154 yards. He had a interception, and Deshaun was sacked 3 times. So these quarterbacks that are in the AFC North right now, all of them, just haven't played up to snuff, up to the standard or the expectation going into this season. And I think that's going to be an advantage for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. The Cleveland Browns lost their, all-pro right tackle, and they're replacing him, Cleveland, with Dwan Jones, a rookie who already called out TJ Watt, said that he has a fatal flaw, that he leaves his chest open and he thinks he base exposed TJ Watt. Well, let's see how that goes. I think George Kittle, challenged TJ Watt last week and ended up with 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 was recovered by the defense. Let's see what kind of damage TJ Watt can do against the Browns, especially after the rookie tackle Dwan Jones is coming out and saying that he has a flaw. He opens his chest and he can exploit it. Okay. Let's see how that works. History serves that TJ Watt has played very well against the Cleveland Browns, and a lot of the sacks that he's had in his career, he can thank the Cleveland Brown organization, whether it was Baker Mayfield or whoever. TJ Watt got to him. So I'll be excited to see what TJ Watt can do in this game. Last week, Deshaun Watson held on to the ball. I want to say it was like over 3 seconds per pass attempt. And that's kind of on par with what he was doing last year as well. If he's holding the ball that long, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, even Keanu Benton, Larry Njoku, if he's 100%, they're going to raise havoc against him, and they're going to be able to go and put some numbers against Deshaun Watson. The main focus obviously is going to be Nick Chubb. He had 18 carries, 106 yards last week, but the entire running game as a whole, end up running for 206 yards, 5.2 average, 1 touchdown, along a 19 by Elijah Moore. So, last week the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of didn't do so well against the run. I anticipate that they are probably going to start somebody else than Martavius Adams at the nose position. That would probably be the smartest thing. You know what I'm saying? Because he's more of, I guess, because he's kind of out of position. He's plays more like a tackle, not a nose. He's a little bit quicker, and he can create a pass rush. But when it comes to the rushing game, it's not really Martavius Adams' game. Now, Fihoko, I think, would probably be more suited for this game. A guy that's not going to really apply a lot of pressure to the quarterback, but is going to stuff up the middle, who's going to just be an anchor. There's not going to be a lane there to run, right? So I can anticipate that's going to be, maybe the move. Maybe the Steelers are going to elevate Brandon Fihoko. I also expect to see a lot of Keanu Benton. Going back and watching the film, he was really good. Especially for a guy his age, being so young, a rookie, and that being his first NFL exposure against a starting team. That was it was impressive. I think that the Steelers should really look at him more often, especially with Cam Hayward going to be out for like 8 weeks with a growing injury that he had to have surgery on, which I think he had surgery on Saturday or Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And so he'll be out for about 8 weeks. Deontay Johnson is going to be out, hopefully less than 4. They did not send Deontay Johnson to the IR. They did send Cam Hayward to IR because he's going to be longer weeks. The IR is if you think that the player is going to take longer than 4 weeks or at least weeks or more to get healthy and to get prepared for the game, right? Because there's one thing, like if you get healthy after 3 weeks, you can't just go back out there. You got to get back into some sort of flow and in a football shape. And it's probably another additional week of building up before the player is going to actually play. And so, with that being said, if the Steelers aren't putting him on IR, I think that means that they expect to be back within 4 weeks. And if that ends up being the case, that's a huge win for the Steelers, because the way he went down, it really, really didn't look good. Like it was possibly a tear. Um, you know, it it looked like he couldn't move his leg. Period. He had to get helped up. It was just kind of it wasn't a good look. Wasn't a good look, but apparently it was not as bad as it seemed. But while we're at it, let's talk about the injury report. So for today, the game status, you have Deontay Johnson out, and Anthony McFarland is also out with a knee. So Steelers are going to probably elevate. I think they brought back Bell. You know, he was on the not Le'Veon Bell. I can't remember what the guy's first name is, but he was playing for the Steelers in the preseason. You know, I think he might be somebody that comes in, perhaps. But Anthony McFarland is out. You know, I know that the Steelers also brought back or elevated Des, Des Fitzpatrick, who has experience in the game. I think with Anthony McFarland out with a knee, I think that there's a good possibility that Des Fitzpatrick ends up getting a helmet for his special teams abilities, and that Gunner still is a guy that doesn't get a helmet this week. There is a little bit of bad news. So today, George Pickens was put on the report. He was limited in practice with a hamstring injury as well. Deontay Johnson and Anthony McFarland did not participate. Isaac Seumalo, who took a day off yesterday, not injury related, was back and was a full participant. Chooks Okorafor was a full participant. So I anticipate Chooks and Dan Moore being your starting left and right tackle this Monday night. Now, I think that Dan Moore's leash is probably getting shorter by the day, you know, especially with the performance that he had last week. You know, I think that PFF graded him the worst tackle in the NFL that played. And, you know, I think some of that may have came after he switched to right tackle. He let up a sack right away and a few pressures on that drive when he came in. But he didn't have a solid game either off the left side. There was a lot of pressure that he was letting through. I think I'm ready to see Broderick Jones. I think I've seen enough of Dan Moore. I think he's serviceable. I think he's capable. You know, I think he's okay. But I want to see if Broderick Jones can bring something better than okay. Something better than, you know, mediocre towards the bottom of mediocre, but better than bad. Because that's kind of where I see Dan Moore at. He's better than bad, but, you know, on the low end of the tier of the middle pack, right? So, like, I think that's where he's at. And I think that it would probably be better for maybe perhaps Broderick Jones to go in there, get some experience. I know it's against several tough edge rushers, you know, to be thrown up there against, but he's going to have to learn. I mean, last season you threw Kenny Pickett into the fire against Buffalo. That was his first start. That was a defense that was, you know, one of the best last season. And, you know, they threw him out there and, you know, threw him to the fire. Now, I get it. Last season was definitely more of a rebuilding season. And this one is, you know, the Steelers are thinking that they are probably more of a contender. We'll see how this game goes. I think if they end up falling flat on their face and don't score at least 17 points, which is low, but we have to remember this is a divisional game. Those games typically in the North aren't blowouts. You know, there's every now and then. But at this venture, at this point of the season, where both teams are, you know, one's a little bit embarrassed and another one that's riding a high wave right now, I think that this is going to be a game that this is not going to be a blowout game. I can't see that happening. Let's see. James Daniels was a full participant with an ankle, and Pat Fryermuth and Larry Ogunjobi also were full participants. That's good to see that Larry Ogunjobi actually got a full practice in. Seems like he's heading in the right direction. I know last week, you know, he was injured throughout the entire week And then this week, it seems like he's moving in the right direction. That foot injury isn't as bad. I'm gonna go through the I'm gonna go through the Browns injury report here in a second. But before I do, I wanna read some of y'all's questions real quick. I see a few of them. I'm convinced Canada uses his game planning time playing Q Lazarus, Goodbye Horses, tucked in a robe, dancing with his wife. That's weird. Burrow's too busy counting his money. I agree to that. Yep. Patrick Peterson made the same mistake talking about tells. It's a mistake. I agree 100% for, a rookie, especially a rookie tackle who is never PJ Watt. There's one thing to see things on film. You may even know where they're going, but can you stop it? You know what I mean? I mean, if you knew that James Harrison was going to bull rush you and he was going to hit you as hard as he could and use all his strength to push you back, and you're a rookie offensive tackle and you know this is going to happen, but you've never felt how strong he is. You think you're going to go? I think it's stupid to go out there and say, "Oh, all he does is a bull rush." Well, that one trick pony is a really good pony, and that can take out a lot of things that you think you know, right? I think that's going to be the same situation here. He may think that, oh, he leaves his chest open and he might go to punch it. The next thing you know, Watt is clubbing that arm down and going right around him and hitting the quarterback. I think that's what's going to happen more often than not, to be honest with you. Najee looks slow. I agree to that. I do think that that is true. I love Najee. I think he's a great person. I think that he's got a lot of heart and that he is a bruiser and a thumper. I just don't see, that first round grade of a back. He's, to me, a little bit limited. He can catch the ball, but that speed is what's limiting him or limiting him, in my opinion. And he does look though, the burst ain't there. Even when he had his long run, it felt like it took a while for him to get around. I think he's a back that you need to give the ball more than 6 times for him to be effective. I think he can be effective in this team, can be effective with his offensive line, but his style of running is definitely going to have to be one where he's constantly getting the ball and wearing down the defense. And then at the end, they just can't stop him. He's, running 4 or 5 yards each time he carries the ball, getting first downs, running out the clock. That's his game. I like what Jalen Warren brings. I think he brings a little bit more of burst and vision when running the ball. And I love the way he pass blocks. I think that he's probably the best pass blocking running back on the team. So I wouldn't be surprised if that, the balance of work that they're going to get between Najee and Jalen become more even as this season goes on until maybe the end of the season. Once it gets cold, I think you're going to want a guy like Najee Harris to go in there and hit you when you don't want to get hit. You know what I mean? It's all about stopping Chubb. Yeah. The Browns front seven is as good as the 49ers. That's not good for the O-line or Pickett. That's true. But to be honest with you, I went back and watched every single passing attempt by the Pittsburgh Steelers, including the ones where Kenny got sacked or Kenny scrambled and ran or whatever the case would be. He had time. He had time to throw the ball. Last week's game, the play calls probably could have been better, but they weren't the issue. In my opinion, there were people open. And I know that Ben Roethlisberger had came out and said something like on his podcast that he didn't think that Matt Canada helped him. You're supposed to run some plays to build the confidence of your quarterback. And There's some give me plays. That way you get into a rhythm. Well, Matt Canada explained that those were the plays that they were running. Those were Kenny Pickett's favorite plays, and he was just off the mark. He had a bad day. I hope it's not an indication of what he's going to be the entire season. I don't think it's going to be, but he didn't have a very good game. And, were there some plays that just didn't make sense? Yeah, like go routes at the 8-yard line. That didn't make any sense. I think that there was an option there, and I think Kenny made the right option in throwing the Pat Freiermuth. And had he turned the other way on that incomplete pass in the end zone, I think it was like a 4th down. That ball is hitting him right between the numbers, and he's open. So it's a one throw move. I think you have that, and then you have another receiver or running back coming underneath, and those are your only options in that play. Everything else is just basically they're just trying to push, the secondary away from Pat Freiermuth in the middle. But yeah, I watched it all. It wasn't necessarily all on Matt Canada, but he is kind of boring. It is kind of the same stuff over and over again. Like I saw the comeback curl and crossers multiple times, not very many slants. I don't think very many at all. And, a couple of go routes, but it was just kind of simple, I guess, simple concepts. But then I wonder, are they not able to open up the playbook and get more complicated if your quarterback's not understanding the simple stuff? So I don't know who it was on as far as that goes, but it did. Kenny was definitely had a lot to blame in that game. Offensive line did okay. There were some times where it didn't look good, but I think the stat was Kenny Pickett had 2.9 seconds to throw the ball, and Brock Purdy had 2.8 seconds to throw the ball. And so in the NFL, 2.9 seconds to throw the ball on average, that's pretty good. That's not bad. I mean, obviously you want it 3 or more, but it's pretty close. And against that defense, you had Nick Bosa. I don't think he recorded a sack at all. So it wasn't as bad as it looked, but when it came also to the passing game, it appeared that Kenny and some of the players just weren't on the same page. There were several times where Kenny thought that the player was going to either stop and or do a comeback. Players continue to run. One was on Pat Freiermuth. Well, 2 were on Pat Freiermuth, and 1 was on Allen Robinson. Now, I don't know who was right or wrong in those situations. I will say that if Kenny was right in those situations, those receivers were more protected. Meaning, like, for instance, the one that Pat Freiermuth got hit in the chest. I think he was supposed to do a comeback instead of and the reason why is because the outside wide receiver on the opposite end of the field was also doing it. And so when you do those deep posts like that, they were actually running towards the safety, both of them making the safety's job very easy. So one of them ran the wrong route, in my opinion. And I think that based on where the ball was positioned and it hit Pat Freiermuth on the back shoulder, and he ended up being opened up his chest, and that's how he ended up getting, the chest injury, being hit by the safety from the 49ers. Had he stopped and curled back, he would have been in position to catch ball, and he's not taking a hit to the chest. So there was some miscommunication. I don't know who was right or wrong. It could be that Pat Freiermuth was right and the opposite receiver ran the wrong route, and Kenny just threw a bad pass. It wasn't accurate. That's a possibility as well. But go check that out, look at the tape, and make your opinion of what you see. Let's see. The Browns will try to stop the run and put heat on Kenny Pickett. Everyone knows what is coming. The question is, can they prepare for it? That's a true statement. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, That's what the Steelers' identity is or has been, right? Except for this year, obviously they didn't run the ball very much. But when you look at the what they were able to do successfully last year and how they got in momentum and how they moved forward, that was all relative to running the ball and doing those type of things. And the other thing is, I was listening to when it comes to the play calls, because there's more than just is there somebody open, right? Because football game is fast, right? And you can't expect. I mean, that's kind of like what made Tom Brady pretty good was that he always knew the open guy was going to be at, and the reason was that he understood his plays and he knew where to go based on what the defense was showing him pre-snap and after snap when they tried to move away, and he knew, all right, this area is going to be open or that area, and that's how he was able to move the ball down the field effectively. And it was no matter what you did, it just didn't work, for the most part until he got older. And with Kenny, he's just not processing the field very quickly either. I noticed that when the game or the play was the design of the play, like the first read was good. If the first read was good, he was making an accurate throw. He was throwing the ball on time. But if he had to move to a second or third read, he began to get happy feet and get antsy. And I noticed that, his happy feet would affect his ball placement as well and his antsy. So I think they're going to try to hit him again. They're going to probably send a lot of the blitz, I would anticipate. Schwartz, the defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, he's been known to be a very good defensive coordinator in the NFL and be one that can apply pressure to the quarterback. And he's got a lot of talent on that team to apply pressure. So this banged up offensive line needs to come together and figure some stuff out. Now, as far as the, and I'll get back to some of those questions, but I wanted to talk about the injuries. Amari Cooper is questionable for Monday night because he has a groin injury. So the thing, in my opinion, is even if he does come in, right, even if Amari Cooper does play, I don't think he's going to be 100%. He's not going to be as explosive as, he usually is. And having a groin injury is also going to affect your cuts and in your routes. And he's not going to be able to do those as fluid and as effective and as sharp. It's going to be a big benefit for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense of backs who struggled last week. Patrick Peterson was picked on, and I think a lot had to do with what he was saying when it came to, Brock Purdy and the tails that the 49ers have. But he's questionable. Let's see. Well, who else was on their injury report? I had it earlier, and then all of a sudden it just kind of disappeared on me. All right, so Shelby Harris is limited as well for the Browns. Maurice Hurst, Juan Thornhill, the calf, and Jared Wills with a foot. Now, the biggest one obviously is going to be Amari Cooper. He had a big game in the first matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and him not being either 100% or there is going to be huge for the Steelers, secondary that played very poorly last week. I think that, and it doesn't sound like Joey Porter is going to get more time this week than he did last week. By all indications, it seems that, from the sports beats writers and the media that get to attend the practice, it appears that Levi Wallace will definitely be making another start. But, the problem I have with that is you have Levi Wallace and you have Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson's quite a bit up there. So he's not the fastest cornerback in the league anymore. And Levi Wallace was never considered a very speed guy, right? So, in my opinion, the Steelers have a speed issue when it comes to the secondary. I'm not sure if Joey Porter answers that, you know what I'm saying? But Joey Porter is a very physical and a very hands-on cornerback When you have those speedy type of receivers, and you want to disrupt the timing. And if he can get on them and disrupt the timing between the quarterback and the receiver, that'll do just as much, for the secondary group as if he was, world speed keeping up with these guys. But we'll see. We'll see. I think that Steelers got a good opportunity to win this game, though. Keys to victory. Obviously, the Steelers have to stop Nick Chubb. I think that's going to be priority number one. And, they're going to give an opportunity to Watson to make some plays with his arm. I think the Steelers are going to basically want the Cleveland Browns to, or force the Cleveland Browns to use Deshaun Watson's arm to win that game. They're probably going to have to keep a spy on Deshaun Watson as well. He did a lot more damage with his legs, in my opinion, than he did with his arm last week. And, going back to last season, his pocket presence and his ability to move in the pocket is pretty good. He is elite when it comes to that. I will give him that. And, last year the Steelers could have had probably 3 or 4 more sacks, should have had probably 3 or 4 sacks against Deshaun Watson. But, his ability to get out of the pocket was just, it was there. And, he did some crazy stuff there, but he couldn't do anything down the field. And I think the Steelers are going to kind of, stick to a similar game plan. And I think that if everything goes well, Mike Tomlin on Monday night at home, I think he has almost a perfect doesn't. And we'll see. The Browns are wearing their white uniforms. Let's turn around back to brown by knocking them on their butts over and over again. But for me, I think this is going to be a closer game. And even though the Steelers probably don't score 25, 30 points in this game, I don't think that should be some sort of indication that the offense was poor. What we need to see in this game is the offense be able to maintain possession, move the ball up and down, and put points on the board, whether, I know you don't want to hear it, whether they're field goals or touchdowns, but points need to get on the board. Last game, the Steelers probably left maybe not very much, maybe 6-9 points on the board, off the board, because they chose to go for it, not go for the field goal, and their attempts weren't well. But, they need to get points on the board. And this type of game where you have 2 good defenses against 2 offenses that, might be struggling a little bit, especially through the passing game. I do think that at this point today that the Browns running attack it seemed to be better than the Steelers, because, we only have 1 game and the Steelers really didn't run the ball. But, you got to give them that. It's going to be tough for the Steelers defense, especially without Cam Hayward. Him being out for a while and this kind of game too, that's a big question mark. But defensively, I think the Steelers, like I said, they have to stop Nick Chubb, make Deshaun Watson beat him with his arm. Offensively, they have to get an identity in this game, and they have to maintain possession of the ball more than, like, what was it? I think they had 9 minutes or 8 minutes of time of possession in the first half, something like that. That can't happen again. This defense can't be on the field, for almost 40 minutes a game. They're going to get that, leads to fatigue and injury, especially right now where these players aren't used to playing 60 minutes of football, right? They just played preseason. Last week was their first full game of 60 minutes football, and you had them out there for a very long time. I mean, what do you expect, right? Some people are going to get injured. It's happened last year. It's already happened this year with Cam Hayward. The offense needs to pull their weight and start doing some things. Let's see. Najee's the man. I do think that Najee Harris is a good back, but I just think he's on the slower end. And, I think that the Steelers thought that they were going to get Derrick Henry when they drafted Najee Harris. And to this point, he hasn't been that. Yeah, Pickett's time, Birdie's time, exactly. This is a great question. Afton Ford says, I want to know why Washington wasn't an end zone target. I have no idea. He was open quite a bit throughout the game as well. Um, I loved his blocking ability. Like, don't get me wrong, I have a Pat Fryer move. I'm a fan of Pat, but I think Washington might be a better overall tight end than Pat Fryer move. Um, maybe not right now, but definitely in the near future. I think he's going to be a much better overall. What Darnell Washington was able to do to Bosa and pancake him and block him, not just on that one play that everybody highlighted. He was able to block him on a few occasions. He's been able to win against Alex Highsmith in camp and in practice against TJ Watt. I think he's going to be a guy that the Steelers are going to look to more often, and they should. That second play the Steelers had, the jet sweep that got blown up in the back. The reason it got blown up is because Pat Freiermuth blew his job 3 times. So his job was to block the edge guy and then move up to the second level and get somebody else and a linebacker coming in. And what he did was he completely just missed. I mean, it looked like Kendrick Green out there where he's blocking air and falling on his face, except Pat Freiermuth didn't fall on his face. He just blocked air. And then he immediately turns around and just watches this guy attempt to tackle Calvin Austin, allowing 2 other 49ers to run past him. And he continues to just watch. And then it clicks that he needs to find work when Calvin Austin is just getting tackled. Like, that was beyond me. I didn't understand that. And then I do think that he was possibly wrong a few plays that resulted in incompletions. The one where Kenny threw the ball and he laid weird on the floor. I think he was supposed to continue up the field. And the one that ended up getting him hit in the chest, I don't know where Kenny puts that ball. He's not, there's a good chance he's catching the ball and he's not, having a chest injury. So I don't know who was right or wrong in those situations, but I think based on the tape and based on the outcome of those plays, I don't think it was wrong in those situations. I don't think he had a great game or his decisions were right all the way across the board. Those 2 interceptions he threw were really bad decisions. So it's kind of hard to tell who's right or wrong there. Let's see. We only got down 10 points and then panicked. Yeah. Well, they went the first drive, I think, was 3 passing attempts. And then it was 3 and out. And then the second drive, everybody knew the Steelers were going to try to run the ball first play. And that's when Najee Harris got blown up in the backfield. Then they started just going backwards. Nothing was working. Oh, man. Let's see. I want to know why there is. I didn't see much of Glenn Thomas's influence. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know. Here's the one thing that I heard on Steelers Depot and I want to go back and watch it because I didn't pick it up. But apparently the only time that the Steelers put receivers in motion is when they're running the ball. And when they're passing the ball, there's no motion. Keep an eye out on Monday night's game. See if that's true. If we see, motion and it's a running play, I mean, that's a big problem. That's a big tell. That's not a small tell. That's a big tell. It's not like, Ben Roethlisberger's left foot is slightly off the ground when he's going to pass the ball, or it's all the way on the ground. He's going to hand it off on most occasions. Not on every occasion, on most occasions. I want to see how accurate this thing is, where if the receiver goes in motion, that that it's going to be an automatic run or a jet sweep. Jared Devil says throw Mason in. I don't think anybody's going to be calling for Mitch if Kenny struggles. I think that's not going to happen at all. I don't think we're going to hear the chance of Mitch or Trib or Bisky. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think that the Steelers fans, and it's kind of weird to think about, but I wouldn't be surprised of that if, you know, for whatever reason, if Mitch Trubisky had to go in, whether it's because Kenny's not playing well or Kenny goes down, I don't think they're going to be yelling out Mitch. I do think that maybe perhaps they might chant out a little bit of Mason, which is weird because everybody wanted him out of here, right? And now it's like, man, he's probably the best backup quarterback that we have that could fill in. And one of the biggest issues with Kenny Pickett that I saw was the second, third reads, his progression, right? And I think that was an issue with Mason early on in his career, but I don't think that's an issue now. I think that he is a guy, though, that if it's not there on the first and second read, he's dumping it down. He doesn't go to that third or fourth. Kenny Pickett kind of panics and then runs around and then gets sacked or then throws the ball on the ground. But I digress. I worry about Kenny's. Yeah, see, I'm not sure if it's about his vision. I think the game's just too fast for him right now. Or maybe the 49ers were just too fast. Because he did fine in preseason. Those are pro athletes. Yes, there's not a lot of game planning going in. It's vanilla. But it just seemed like the game was too fast for him in this game. And the defense was just flying. Now, I know one of the Steelers correspondents, Max Starts, before the game, he had made a comment saying that the Steelers didn't look like they were ready to play. Like they were just like, blah. I've seen when they are. There's been a few times when the Steelers go into a game kind of flat-footed. I don't know why they would, take a team lightly that was just in the NFC Championship, but I kind of got that feel. You know what I mean? Let's see. What's up, Brian? Thank you. If Kenny doesn't learn to read D scheme and know where wide receivers are going to be open, he will not last. Yeah, that's the problem because it didn't really appear also that the 49ers were hiding what they were doing. If they had a single safety up high, there wasn't anybody dropping back, to show cover one, but it's cover two. I didn't see that a lot. I saw that, they ran man when it appeared that they were going to be in man, and zone when they appeared they were going to be in zone. And, there wasn't much disguise to it. That's a big concern to me because there's no disguise. And these are the plays that Kenny likes. And these plays have this designated plays that are designed to beat zone and or man. And those plays are working. When there was many times that they were playing zone, that the comeback was just wide open every single time. Hit the damn thing until they show they can stop it, right? But that was every time it was open, every single time, and it was like he just didn't throw it there. Let's see. Did I read that right, Mason? Mason will end up the now that is football justice. That sure is, man. That would be football justice if that ended up happening. Canada's schemes don't help Pickett. Plus, best wide receivers for separation is DJ Pickens. So far is a one-trick pony, 50-50 guy. He wants to be the guy. His route running needs to improve. Maybe. I will say that DJ is definitely the best in separation, definitely the best runner. But I think that George got open a few times in this game. I think that the times that Pickett is, throwing the ball to him is when there's, where he thinks there's an offside penalty, so it's a free play, so he chunks it up, or it's a go route. But there's been multiple times, like for instance, he's running underneath the coverage in the zone for a first down, and Kenny don't throw it to him. That happened with Tay Johnson a bit, Darnell Washington a bit. It was quite a bit It was not a very good game. Is Boykin playing? I'm not sure. I didn't see him on the injury list. Canada's schemes don't seem to fit or help anyone. I was afraid the Steelers' offense was strong. Yeah, I'm not going to say that Canada's play calls are brilliant and it's all on the players not executing. That would be unfair. The play calling needs a lot of help. There's nothing. Granted, he's doing things that out of different formations, but the concepts are the same. And I think it was Alex Kozora who said that it doesn't seem like he builds off of those concepts. And I tend to agree. Like, for instance, last year, there was a play where the Steelers were playing the Eagles. And in early on, they did a like a screen play. And then they did the same play in the second half. But the difference was instead of hitting the screenplay, they hit the deep route off the back. And I think it was AJ Brown scored a touchdown on that one. Now, I think it was NFL Live said, now this is what coaching is. You set this play up in the first quarter. That way, when you use it again in the third quarter, defense thinks that, oh, I remember this. I know what they're going to do. And I think it was Terrell Edmonds came up and boom, hit the receiver for a long gain. Steelers don't do that. They don't do one play and then go back to the same play later on, much later on, the different target. It's like Matt Canada will see something like, oh, hey, George Pickens was open in the flat. And then they'll go back to that play the next drive, which is kind of dumb. And then they want to go back to George Pickens in the flat, thinking that, oh, that defense didn't notice it. They didn't look at the pictures or the film on the sideline to notice that there was a guy open. And so when they go and do this play again, like, oh, hey, I need to know to get back here. And then guess what? It doesn't work because it's the exact same play. They don't build off of it. They don't change it. That's where Matt Canada struggles as an offensive coordinator, in my opinion. Now, he did mention that a lot of the plays that they ran were Kenny's favorite plays, and he was struggling and he couldn't get on the right page. I need to see a game where, Steelers do some positive things offensively, and then the next game build off of that and do different things offensively. This game was it was so out of control. They got so far behind so quickly. It's a hard tape measure or measuring tape, right? It's a hard chaser to follow and say, all right, that's the standard, because there's a good possibility that the Steelers beat themselves quite a bit in that game, and it shouldn't have been as bad as it was, and that the Steelers had opportunities to get back into that game or make it a game. They were there. But because they were playing comeback mode and, trying to force the ball deep and this, that, and the third, you really can't look at this game as a game of like, all right, this is what the Steelers offense is. Let's see how they do this week. If they do okay and or good, we'll see what they do the following week. And we'll look at, all right, was there anything that was expanded upon? Are they doing pass plays with motion now? Things like that. And that'll tell us that it's not, that the issues weren't so much Canada, it was more the players having to execute, right? But if the Steelers play well and it's the same stuff, and they go to the next week, they play well or okay, and it's the same thing, that's on the coach. So that's kind of how we're going to be able to tell, who's at fault here. Because if it's the same stuff over and over again, when you play good teams that do good film study, you're not going to do very well. I hope all that makes sense. Sam Allo looked like he was dogging it for sure. Yeah, he looked like he was getting beat on a couple of plays. I thought that he played below the line, in my opinion. The Steelers need to score touchdowns in the red zone. And they got to get there. I think that in the first half, the only time they got there was the 2-minute drill. But yeah, Yeah, and they get there, they got to score more touchdowns. I'm surprised that in the other, trips where they made it kind of close to the end zone that they didn't target Darnell Washington there. There it is. They need to get into the red zone also. Uh, the O line gave no room for Pickett to maneuver in the pocket. I don't know. I have to go back and watch. That's possible. Uh, we definitely want to see better scoring possession ratio, 100%. Better communication on defense, 100%. Offensively, you would think that they're there already. Outside of Isaac Seumalo, who was deemed the smartest left guard in the game by his former center in Philadelphia. And relatively, the entire offense was kind of the same as last year, especially in the second half of last year when they got hot. It's the same offensive line outside of Seumalo, the same receiving core, except they have the addition of Calvin Austin. Same two running backs. Tight end number one is the same. Tight end number two, I think, is an improvement over Zach Gentry. But that's the backup. That's the second guy. That's not the first guy. And even in Calvin Austin, now he's the first guy. But going into last week and, the first half of that game, he was the gimmick guy, the jet sweep guy, right? So this offense should be able to communicate better. They should have more chemistry amongst each other. There's no excuse for them. Defensively, communication needs to increase. And I think that there's a possibility for that to increase because that team hasn't played collectively meaningful Sunday football games together. Right? The defensive backs are all relatively new except for Levi Wallace and Minka Fitzpatrick. KZ's new to the starting lineup. Your middle linebacker crew was completely overhauled. So with all that said, there's going to be some miscommunication there. There's going to be some growing pains. I mentioned that before. But in that second half of that game, outside of the early, long gain by McCaffrey, the Steelers held them to 3 points for majority of the half. The defense started to get better as the game progressed, as they started to build more chemistry amongst each other. I think the offense did to a certain extent, but it just was not at the same speed. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Hey, what's up? Just me. Who are my X factors for Monday's game? For the Steelers offense is going to be Darnell Washington. I think he's going to be a huge piece in this game. I think they're going to tap into what he's able to do, not just catching the ball, but also blocking. I think he's going to be out there on the field more. On defense, Quan Alexander. I think, you know what? Landon Roberts. He's a thumper. He can hit. I think he's going to try to lay the wood on Nick Chubb and on Deshaun Watson. So those are two of my ex players on offense and defense that are going to, make the difference in the game, in my opinion. When you have the rushing ability the Cleveland Browns have, and Landon Roberts, he's going to have to get up there and really do something. But also, Keanu Benton and whoever nose tackle, they're going to be a big component of that as well. In order for the middle linebacker to play well, the front interior defensive line has to play well too. Because if they're not playing well and they're allowing guards and centers to get to the second level, that's a huge disadvantage for the middle linebackers. Those that are great or good usually have really interior defensive lines that keep them clean. Harris isn't that man, no matter how much fans wish it, say it or write it. We'll see. He had some flashes his rookie year. He made a lot of nothing, a lot of nothing into something his rookie year. Last year he was banged up. He really was. And the offensive line was brand new to each other. They built chemistry. Down the line, he played well. This is supposed to be a healthier season for him, a better offensive line. He only had 6 attempts in this game. I want to see what he's able to do, or, if the Steelers really try to focus in on trying to run the ball and see what he's able to do. But I will say that there is concern there with his speed and mm, he's to this point, he's just not been what the Steelers expected him to be. I'll give the O minute just because they haven't played together, but they need to work and to build that chemistry. Well, it's only Isaac Sayamalu. I mean, Mason Cole was there last year, Daniels, Chicks Now, if Broderick Jones would have started, I would have said, yeah, there's going to be maybe some growing pains on that left side. But Dan Moore's back. I mean, I think they should be better than they are. There's going to be the CA3 show. I hope so. Kenny Pickett came out and said that he really likes the chemistry that he has with Calvin Austin. Last season throughout training camp, that was the guy that he was throwing the ball to the most because that was who he was taking reps with. So he said that he felt confident and comfortable and that he's excited to see what he has. I think that he's got an opportunity, if he can go out there and show that he can be a wide receiver one, and use his speed, and if his running ability is there, he's got a great opportunity. The only downside that I had seen, going into the season was that he may have had a little bit of a problem with the drops. He was dropping the football quite a bit. But in this game, he went 6 for 6. The only drop happened was on the pass interference play, which was getting hit early. So, I don't think that was exactly a drop. George says, if Pickett struggles this game, does he finish it? I think he will. I don't think the Steelers are going to bench him. I don't think they bench him anytime soon, even if he continues in this manner. I think he'll be the starter throughout the bye week, and I don't foresee him being bad enough to be benched. But I do see that if it's a mediocre season and it doesn't get better, if he doesn't have any multiple touchdown games, which he hasn't had, this offense doesn't have a 400-yard game, which is the only offense that hasn't had in the last 3 years. Those things don't happen. He doesn't have a breakout game. He doesn't flash outside of a few drives and 2-minute drill. I think there's got to be a question or discussion brought up about the future of that position and if he's the right guy. If you go to Mason, you can't go back, right? So what happens if Mason gets hurt? Well, I mean, that's if you go to Mason in game. I think that if Kenny gets injured, Mitch is going to come in no matter what. But I think that, if Kenny were to go down or get benched or whatever, I don't see Kenny going all the way down to third if he got benched for his play. I highly doubt he's going to get benched for his play regardless, even if he's that bad. I think the Steelers are going to try to stick with him and say, hey, let's see if he can progress. And if he can't, then we'll have a high draft pick, and next year quarterback class is supposed to be better. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think that's in game. If you go with Mason, you won't be able to put him back out there. But afterwards, after the fact, Mason's on the 53. So during the season, if they want to put Mason 1, Kenny 2, and Mitch the third, they can easily do that before the game. Why wasn't Mason number 2? Because they pay a lot of money to Mitch Trubisky to be number 2. It's a financial politic thing. But yeah, Mitch for back for sure. Let's see. Joseph says, didn't the Steelers bring in an assistant offense to help the passing scheme? I mean, that's what people thought when Thomas Glenn came in, that he was going to be assisting in the passing scheme. This entire offseason, the biggest request out of the Pittsburgh Steelers was, would they or could they, go out there and get a passing game coordinator? That they were happy with Matt Canada's scheme and the running game, that the running game really did improve. But that the question was the passing game. They brought in Glenn Thomas. I don't know if he has anything to do with the passing situation that was going on here recently, but um, maybe he was the one running plays in the preseason. I don't know. I think I saw Matt Canada on the ground during the preseason. At least in one game, he was on the sideline, well, booth. So who knows? Maybe Glenn Thomas was running the preseason plays, and that's why it looked a lot better. But I don't know necessarily if he's actually helping with the scheme or if he's just assisting Matt Canada with anything. The Steelers haven't adjusted at halftime for more than a few. Yeah, Mike Tomlin's I guess game plan isn't that, oh, we got to adjust to what the other team is doing. It's more his attitude toward it is more, we got to fix what we're doing and do it better, right? Because we have a game plan. We've done this game plan all week. We practice it. This is what we know. This is what we're going to do. And I think that when you put all your eggs in one game plan without having a set of plays or schemes in case a defense is doing something you're not expecting, I think that's kind of foolish, to be honest with you. 1 yard in 28 minutes is not acceptable. It is not. It is not. Let's see. So as far as predictions go, I'm going to do that and then we'll call it a show. I think the Steelers, I'm going to go ahead and say the Steelers win this game, but I'm not sure how long I'll be if they end up dropping this game extremely bad like they did to the 49ers. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be picking them to win, to be honest with you. But I'm going to pick them to win this game. I think it's going to be a lot closer. This is a dune game. This is a rivalry game. I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers 24 and the Cleveland Browns 21. Yeah, I'm going to go 24-21, a close game, and a lot closer than we expect. I think going into this game, going into week one and looking at the schedule, we all knew that San Francisco was going to be the hardest team in the first 5 weeks or so before the bye. But we didn't expect that we were going to get our teeth kicked in, to use Coach Tom for. And, I think if the Steelers, would have been more competent in that game, I think I'd be more confident in them, still handling business in this stretch of games that are against opponents that should be winnable. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go Steelers win this one. I hope they win. I'll be in stadium. I hate to travel all the way to Pittsburgh just to see them lose or get their tail handed to them. My buddy Devin Engel from the Here We Go show went all the way to Pittsburgh Steelers and the 49ers in the home opener, a game that the price tag on the game tickets were up there. A lot of red came in, and he went all the way out there from California as well, and just to get to see the Steelers lose really bad. So I hope that's not the case. I hope the Steelers go in there and kick some tail and get back in a position where everybody's optimistic again. Now, I want to get back to where we were last week, where everybody's excited to see the team play and nobody was embarrassed. So let's flip that coin. Let's flip the pillow, so to speak, to the other side, and let's pick ourselves up, and hopefully the Steelers go out there and win the game. I think 24-21 Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll be doing a post-game show out there in Pittsburgh. That'll be the next time I come on, I think. And then when I get back, I'll do another film breakdown. We're probably going to do maybe 5 plays that worked on offense, 5 plays that didn't work on offense, and do the same on defense as well. So please hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell if you're not already done so. We'll see you guys then at the next one. Hopefully the Steelers win. Here we go.